What is up, everybody? This is your boy, Teran Rodriguez, bringing you another edition of Set Point. We have quite a bit to talk about, such as the Big West Conference men's volleyball season has begun. Hawaii and UC Irvine took on one another in some Big West Conference non-conference play action. Who came out on top and who impressed? Also on the women's side, we had quite a bit of upsets, such as Ohio State coming back from an 0-2 deficit to take down No.8 Penn State. How did the Buckeyes do it, and what went wrong for Penn State? Also in the Big Ten, we had a top 5 showdown between Nebraska and Minnesota. Were both teams victorious? Did one team win both matches, or did the other team win both matches? Also, we had a little cancellation in some of the conferences and postponement in terms of women's volleyball matches, but that's alright because we have other matches to go over. And Ohio State men's volleyball pulled off the upset against Loyola of Chicago. Not once, but twice. How did the Buckeyes do it, and did they get a little inspiration from their female counterparts? All that and more here on Set Point. This is Teran Rodriguez bringing you another edition of Set Point here on iSports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. And welcome all to another edition of Set Point. Thank you for joining me on this beautiful Tuesday afternoon. I hope you all are ready for some volleyball action, because I am. We had quite a great weekend of volleyball, from the NCAA women's side of things to the NCAA men's side of things. Yes, it's looking like volleyball is starting to come back fully in the world, with the exception of the Big West Conference and the Ivy League, especially on the women's side. But the Ivy League as a whole canceled all its sports. So it's unfortunate, but we have to press forward. So without any further delay, let's jump on into this volleyball action. But first, we have to take care of a little housekeeping, little shout-outs to our sponsors. Our first shout-out to our sponsor is Legacy Financial. 2020 was a tough year. However, staying positive, keeping your faith, and continuing to work hard is the goal. If you're in a financial struggle at the moment, you're doing well, or you want to get to the next level, or if you're looking for a new opportunity to work for yourself and earn more money part-time, give Iowa a call at 510-928-2104. Once again, that phone number is 510-928-2104 to book your appointment today. Io and her husband Andrew are just two people on a mission to help families build a legacy, because everyone needs a legacy in this world. You can follow them on Twitter at legacy_uncut, and you can follow them on Instagram at sims_uncut. iSports Radio's second sponsor is Mama's Always Right Media. Are you feeling overwhelmed with schoolwork? Those essays keeping you up at night? Don't lose sleep. Pick up the phone. Mama's Always Right Writing Agency will give you quality essays, and they will always make their deadlines. Sleep soundly knowing that they are on the job. For more information, call 626-653-3649. Once again, that phone number is 626-653-3649. Also, Mama's Always Right Media is spelled with a W-R-I-T-E for the word right. Not right as in R-I-G-H-T. Just gotta throw that out there. Also, check out Mama's Always Right Media's podcasts, such as It Goes Down in the PM. Make sure you check out the newest episode of It Goes Down in the PM, brought to you by Mama's Always Right Media. Also, check out Coffee After Dark, another podcast for Mama's Always Right Media. Don't miss the next chapter of your favorite love story. Check out Season 2 of Coffee After Dark, brought to you by Mama's Always Right Media, where they will help you open your business from start to finish. And then iSports Radio's final sponsor is the Sports Rundown. Are you a sports fan but have too much going on in your life these days to keep up with the 24/7 news cycle? Or maybe you are new to sports and want to understand the nuances better. If so, then the Sports Rundown is for you. They are a new podcast that gives you basic, professional, and collegiate sports news, stats, tidbits, and fun facts by the time you get to work, start that second cup of coffee, or finish walking the dog. Enough information to make you rich with knowledge involving sports while talking about current sporting events, and they will teach you something fun along the way, like about mascots, uniforms, history, feel-good stories, and sports rules. They even cover the Premier League. New episodes drop Monday and Friday mornings, so come give them a listen. Thank you to all three of our sponsors. I appreciate you for sponsoring IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Alright, so now let's dive on into the volleyball action. You feel me? Alright, so we had ourselves quite the number of matches that happened this past weekend. In my hand, I actually have the upsets that happened, but I'll also make brief note of some interesting matchups that had happened over the weekend. Starting on the men's side, we had Hawaii and UC Irvine face one another. I'm not going to get too far into it because it was their season opening matches. Long story short, for the first match, Hawaii was a little rusty coming out because they had to travel to UC Irvine to play the Anteaters. But after dropping the first set, Hawaii came back and won the next three sets and beat UC Irvine 3-1. The second match between UC Irvine and Hawaii totally went Hawaii's way. They dominated the first two sets, and the third set, UC Irvine won to push it to a fourth set, but unfortunately, Hawaii, being very talented, said no, we are not, we want our sweep. We want to get out of here ASAP, and they did so. So, good for Hawaii men's volleyball and whatnot. So, good work for them. Irvine, they pretty much against Hawaii. They pretty much performed as I expected. Nothing against UC Irvine, but Hawaii's just on another level. Rado Parapanov looks like a possible Player of the Year candidate, and honestly, he and the rest of the Hawaii offense and rest of the Hawaii team are basically humming together. So keep an eye out for Hawaii. So there's that. So the second matchup that happened, the second brief little matchup that happened was UCLA defeating USC. Now, UCLA is the top 10 team in the nation, while USC is unfortunately unranked. So everyone's expecting a blowout, right? No, these little Trojans are actually pretty good. As UCLA took the first set, I don't remember the exact match, but I want to say UCLA took the second set, then USC took the third set, and then UCLA took the fourth set. It was a very tight match. I think all the sets were decided by 2 points, if I'm not mistaken. So when it comes to USC and UCLA, just throw out the records. That's my recommendation. So there is that, and honestly, it's not to be expected. I knew UCLA was going to win. As much as everyone would like to see another USC upset, it just wasn't going to happen. And unfortunately for USC, they couldn't protect the Galen Center as UCLA just conquered them. So there's that. So it's a bummer, but USC's getting better. So then the last brief little NCAA men's volleyball matchup that happened over the weekend was BYU against number 10 GCU. Now, one of the matches went 5 sets, and I don't know if they actually played 2 matches. If I'm not mistaken, I want to say that they only played 1 match, but one of the matches against between BYU and Grand Canyon really was very interesting. As, believe it or not, Grand Canyon actually came with their best shot against the Cougars, and it looked like it wasn't looking good. And yes, they played 2 matches. So the first matchup went BYU's way as they beat Grand Canyon 3-1. But then the second matchup actually was actually a little bit more interesting because you'll see why. So the first set actually went Grand Canyon's way as they won 25 to, or they won the first set 27 to 25, and in set 2, this is where everything almost went to deep doo-doo for BYU, as in the second set, they actually lost their best player, Felipe de Brito Ferreira, who came off the court with an apparent ankle injury, and believe it or not, this was actually when BYU was trailing 22 to 20 in set 2, and everyone was holding their breath, thinking, "Oh no, this can't be happening. Like, it can't happen." Like, and then fortunately for BYU, them being the number 1 team in the nation, they dug deep and won the second set 28 to 26. The third set, Grand Canyon won 23 to 25, and then just like that, the Lopes were up 2-1 on the Cougars, and everyone was pretty much saying, "Is BYU going to lose again?" Well, to Grand Canyon's dismay, BYU took the fourth set 25 to 23. All 4 of those sets were decided by 2 points. And then 2 of those sets actually went past the 25-point mark. So there's that. Now, in the fifth set, BYU was able to conquer that fifth set, as that was actually the most one-sided. It wasn't really one-sided, but BYU just took charge and they won that set 15 to 11. So overall, it was a close win. It was a very close win for BYU. It just goes to show you that no one is invincible. No one is invincible. And then I don't know what's going to happen with Felipe de Brito Ferreira, because I want to say he is I don't know if he's the reigning player of the year. Yeah, he's a senior, but I don't think he's the reigning player of the year. But either way, it would be tough if he had to miss a couple of games, especially with this pandemic. Fortunately for BYU, they had the reigning cavalry come on and help them in BYU's time of need, and that was Zach Eschenberg, who had 16 kills, 2 service aces, and 2 blocks. So great work on Zach's part, and honestly, BYU certainly needed that, because everyone now knows that BYU is not invincible. Obviously, their first... then again, when it comes to their most recent matches, their last 3 matches, BYU has not swept their opponents. Their opponents have at least taken 1 set off them. The last time they registered a sweep was against Pepperdine and UCLA. And then the first match of the season, BYU lost that one because they were missing a few players and whatnot. But so was UCLA. So anyway, BYU and Grand Canyon actually will be meeting once again on Thursday and Saturday. So that's going to be fun. This time they'll be meeting at the GCU Arena in Phoenix, Arizona. So we'll see if the Lopes can take the victory over BYU, but I can pretty much see BYU winning that one. All right, so that's pretty much the brief little recap of the notable men's volleyball matchups that happened. Now for the semi-notable women's volleyball matchups that happened. So a lot of women's volleyball matches got postponed, and then a few got canceled. So the canceled ones were basically from the Pac-12. Stanford and Washington State got canceled because of COVID protocols within the Cardinal program, and that really stunk. Another Pac-12 matchup that got canceled was Utah-Oregon, as Utah had to go through COVID protocols. My idea was this: why couldn't Washington State and Oregon face one another in a non-conference game? Why couldn't they do that? Like, it would have been such a great series to see those two teams facing off against one another, just because Oregon and Washington State are both 2 talented teams. And personally, I think it would have been a great matchup because both those teams were ranked, and I think it would have been a great test for both teams. Both teams were kind of young, and I think they should have had it. I don't know what the Pac-12 protocols are, but I think we got cheated out of a nice little matchup. As for the SEC, some of their matchups got postponed, such as I think it was Florida, Kentucky. Nah, not Florida, Kentucky. Florida and Mississippi State, and then South Carolina. I think also another one was South Carolina, Kentucky, and then Tennessee Ole Miss was postponed as well. So there's that too. So a lot of the match, and now when it comes to the SEC matches, those were postponed because of the weather and whatnot. It wasn't because of COVID. Well, actually, no. I'm sorry. The Kentucky-South Carolina matchup was postponed due to the COVID protocols in the South Carolina program. So, unfortunately, we couldn't get that matchup. But the Tennessee-Ole Miss one was postponed due to the weather not being good and whatnot. And then Florida, Mississippi State was postponed due to COVID protocols as well. I think a majority of matchups, I think like half the matchups got like postponed due to weather, and then half got postponed to COVID, or postponed and or canceled due to COVID. So there's that right there. And yeah, Marcus, shout out to Marcus Losgreat that's in the chat room. He says Texas weather. Yeah, pretty much that. Pretty much the Texas weather and pretty much everything that's been going on all over the place, and and all the nasty weather that most people have had to deal with. So that was the reason why the matchups got postponed and whatnot. Otherwise, they would most likely have the matches. Some even try to move their matches to other days, but they just said, nope, we can't do it because it just was too much of an inconvenience for them. So there's that. All right, now let's get into the upsets of last week. So let's start on the men's side of things, because there was only one upset, or actually there were two upsets, but it only came from one series. So this upset came from Ohio State against number 11 Chicago, or number 11 Loyola of Chicago. So Loyola, the first match, Loyola of Chicago took the first set against Ohio State 25-22. And actually, and before I continue, I will also say this: Loyola of Chicago was also undefeated going into this series. So, and Ohio State was reeling off of a series sweep against McKendree. So there's that. Anyway, Loyola of Chicago took the first set 25-22. The second set they actually dominated in, as they took the second set 25-17. I guess I wouldn't say dominated, but it was just all them, as they never trailed and there were no ties, except at 0-0. So then I'm just thinking, okay, well, this matchup's pretty much over. There's no way Ohio State can come back and win. Just based on how Ohio State struggled with McKendree last week, and they were pretty much reeling. But then in that third set, Ohio State managed to make a late run to take the third set 25-23 and keep themselves alive. I'm like, okay, well, Ohio State is not one to give up. So in the fourth set, there were 17 ties and 7 lead changes, and it actually came down to the wire, as it was neck and neck between both those teams. But Ohio State took the fourth set 26-24, and just like that, a fifth set was needed between the Ramblers and the Buckeyes. Now, the fifth set was actually more one-sided than it needed to be, as there was only one tie, but Ohio State led the entire way, as Ohio State never trailed, and they took the fifth set 15-11, completing the reverse sweep and restoring faith in all of Ohio. I'm just kidding. There was no faith lost. There was never a doubt if you're an Ohio State fan. Anyway, so good win for the Buckeyes. Not a good win, or not a good loss for Loyola of Chicago. Their first in conference and their first overall. Leading Ohio State in the victory was Jacob Pasteur, who had 17 kills. He did have 7 hitting errors, but he also had a hitting percentage of .323, which is pretty good. Sotris Siapanis had 15 kills, and he had a hitting percentage of .206, while Martin Lallement had 14 kills, 4 hitting errors for a hitting percentage of .294. In terms of assists, Ohio State ran a 6-2 offense as Michael Wright and Noah Plattfoot had 26 and 25 assists respectively. Ohio State only had 3 service aces as 3 different players recorded 1 service ace. They missed 29 serves, which is one of the reasons why they were struggling to begin with, and which is another reason why most of the sets were pretty tight. In terms of digs, Sotris Siapanis had 10 digs, while the next dig leader was Martin Lallement, who had 6 digs. In terms of blocks, they had 11.5 team blocks. They had 21 block assists, and then their lone solo stuff came from Samuel Clark. As a team, Ohio State hit .276. That's pretty darn impressive, if you ask me. Now for Loyola. So Loyola was led by Luke Denton, who had 17 kills, only 5 hitting errors for a hitting percentage of .343, while Colton Brooks had 11 kills, only 2 hitting errors for a hitting percentage of .375, which is pretty darn impressive. So there's that. But their third leading kill leader only had 6 kills, which isn't really that great. In terms of assists, Garrett Zolg led the way with 37 assists. In terms of service aces, the Ramblers had 4 service aces. They missed 21 serves. You're going to be seeing that a lot when it comes to men's volleyball. So there's that. And Marcus says 6-2 offense, they must be a power team. Yeah, 6-2 offense is you run 2 setters, whether they're on the court at the same time or you just rotate them in. And then 5-1 offense is basically just 1 setter and whatnot. So, and Marcus says they should call themselves Spike City. Good old Marcus. All right, so in terms of digs, the Cubs were led by digs in courtesy of Cole Schlotthauer, who had 8 digs, while Zolg and Denton each had 6 digs, along with Colton Brooks. As a team, Loyola had 13.5 blocks, and they had 25 block assists and 1 solo stuff. And as a team, now this surprised me, Loyola hit .317 as a team, which is a little hard to believe that Ohio State won. Especially in set 5 where Loyola hit .500 and still lost. But they only had 9 kills. Like, all but 2 of their kills, or all but 2 of their points were kills. And it's kind of strange that Loyola hit over 300 but lost, while Ohio State hit .276, which I guess is still pretty impressive for Ohio State's part, but it's still a good win for Ohio State. And that's actually another good victory in their cap, considering that Ohio State already has 2 victories over 2 ranked teams previously, as they beat Lewis in their MIVA conference opener, and they beat Penn State in a non-conference game. So there's that. So now for the second matchup between Loyola of Chicago and Ohio State. So the first set actually was a complete reversal of fate, as Ohio State dominated the first set and took it 25-17. They never trailed, and there were no ties other than 0-0. Second set, Ohio State led most of the way, and there were only 2 ties. There was only 1 lead change, surprisingly. And despite the tight set, Ohio State took the second set 25-22, and a 2-0 lead in the match, and all the momentum was with the Buckeyes. Now, the third set was the closest, as there were 14 ties and 5 lead changes. At first, it was looking like Loyola was actually going to force the fourth set. I'm like, okay, well, there's the Loyola we're all looking for. But then Ohio State just came back late in the third set and basically just chipped away at the lead, and then eventually took the lead, and then they eventually won the third set 27-25, sweeping the Ramblers of Loyola of Chicago. Unfortunately for the Ramblers, they're going to need a lot more than whoever their little good luck charm is. What's her name? Like Sister Kathy or Mother Kathy? I don't know, but Either way, this was not a good series for Loyola. They lost both times to Ohio State. Like, the first time was worse, considering Sister Jean. That's who I'm thinking of. Sister Jean. So Loyola of Chicago is going to need a lot more than Sister Jean in order to get back on track, as they lost to a sub-500 team and an unranked team. Now, I'll give credit to Ohio State. They really brought it this in both matches. But for Loyola of Chicago, this just goes to show you that nothing is guaranteed, especially during this season. Anyway, as for the stats, surprisingly enough, Ohio State, despite having played 3 sets, had 3 players in double digits in terms of kills. As Martin Lallemand had 13 kills, only 3 hitting errors for a hitting percentage of .500. Pretty darn impressive. Sutracia Panis had 11 kills, 4 hitting errors for a hitting percentage of .389, while Jacob Pastor had 10 kills. He did hit .130 because of 7 hitting errors, but that didn't really matter. It was basically just those 3, as 2 other players combined for 7 kills. So it was basically the 3 Brosketeers. In terms of assists, Michael Wright led the way with 28 assists, while in terms of service aces, Ohio State had 5, while missing 16 serves. In terms of digs, they were led by Lallemand and Luke Madel, who each had 7 digs. As a team, Ohio State registered 7 blocks, while registering 12 block assists and 1 solo stuff. And as a team, Ohio State hit 301. So to hit 300 is pretty darn impressive, even in a quick match like that. So good stuff. And they only had 3 players pretty much just carry the load. Other than Justin Howard and Samuel Clark, it was basically Siapanis, Lallemand, and Pasteur. So that's basically the 3-headed monster. So as for the Loyola of Chicago, they were led by Luke Denton, who had 12 kills, 7 hitting errors for a hitting percentage of .161, and that was pretty much their only kill leader, as their next kill leader, unlike Ohio State's, had only 5 kills. Like, Loyola pretty much distributed everything. Like, their strategy was to get everyone involved, while Ohio State's was pretty much to get their 3-headed monster involved with a couple of other role players, as the next kill leader was Andrew Lyons and Henry Payne, who each had 5 kills. In terms of assists, Garrett Zolg had 28 assists, while Loyola only had 2 service aces and missed 15 serves. In terms of digs, their dig leader was Luke Denton, who had 5 digs. They only had 5 blocks as a team, and as a team, Loyola of Chicago hit 188, which is not too good if you're the Cubs. Or, not the Cubs. Why do I keep saying the Cubs? I know why, though. Loyola is a high school in Southern California, and their mascot is known as the Cubs. And I'm mistaking Loyola of Chicago for Loyola of Los Angeles. So that's kind of the reason why I'm mistaking the Cubs for the Ramblers. So anyway, the Ramblers hit 188, which is not really good. I know Loyola of Chicago is better than that, so back to the drawing board, Cubby, or Ramblers, good lord. Anyway, alright, next matchup. So, Ohio State's men's volleyball team wasn't the only one that pulled off a massive upset this past week, as their women's volleyball team took on No.8 Penn State, and it wasn't looking too good for the Lady Buckeyes, as Penn State took the first set 25-17. They only trailed 1 time in that set, and that was pretty much through the early stages of the match. And there were only 5 ties, but Penn State really socked it to Ohio State. Then the second set, it was close early on, but then Penn State really gave them the old 1-2 punch, and Penn State won the match they won the second set 25-13. And just like that, they were up 2-0 on Ohio State, and that it was a situation where Ohio State has never been in. And keep in mind, Ohio State was actually 6-0 going into this match, as this match was actually postponed. This match was actually supposed to be played in week 2 of Big Ten Conference play, but because there was a little COVID outbreak in the Penn State athletics program, they had to push this game back, and part 2 of Ohio State-Penn State won't be for a while. So it was, and despite Ohio State having the better record, this was not going to be an upset for if Penn State was going to win. So everything was looking bleak for Ohio State after the first two sets. But then in the third set, it was a tight back-and-forth set. Ohio State was leading most of the way. Penn State tried to break down the door and get in, but Ohio State said, not in our house, as they took the third set 25-22, keeping themselves alive. And I even said it on Twitter, saying that Ohio State was going to have one of these growing pain matches. Just because Penn State is experienced. Sure, Penn State only has one senior, being a graduate transfer, but this is Russ Rose we're talking about. It's a coach it's a team that's been coached by a coach for over 40 years versus a team that's been coached by a coach that's in her first year. So there's that. Now for the fourth set, again, it was tied. There were 10 ties in set number 4, and it could have gone either way. Ohio State managed to break through in the middle part of the set, and they actually managed to hold on and take set number 4, 25-22, forcing a fifth set. And just like that, all the momentum was back with Ohio State, and this match was actually played in Columbus, Ohio. So there's that. Now the fifth set, Penn State led 2-0 to start out, and then the Buckeyes had a 5-0 run to take the lead at 5-2, and then they eventually led 8-4, and then they led 11-8, and everyone's thinking, okay, Penn State's gonna come back. But then Ohio State actually had other plans. They said, nuh-uh, and then they scored the next 3 points, and then on the final point of the night, I'm actually gonna let the video clip do the talking. So here you go.
Number 8, Kylie Merp serves. Gray keeps it alive, but Merp sends it to Vanya for the kill. The Buckeyes have upset Penn State in a fifth.
Yep, that actually happened. Unranked Ohio State took down the number 8 Penn State in 5 sets, winning the fifth set 15-8, and that was courtesy of Ohio State's, live call stream and whatnot. So, anyway, that was a very impressive win by the Lady Buckeyes. Huge win for Jen Oldenburg, who really has that team steered in the right direction. I definitely gotta give them the applause button. So yeah, that was very impressive on the Buckeyes' part. The Buckeyes were led by Emily Landot, who had 20 kills. She did have 10 hitting errors, but we're not going to look at that number. It's basically like saying that someone had the dunk of the year in the NBA, and they had like the worst stat line, and they had the worst plus-minus in all of history. So the fact that she had 20 kills is amazing. Anyway, as for Ohio State, they also got contributions from Vanja Bakili, who had 16 kills, 6 hitting errors for a hitting percentage of .303, still pretty impressive. And then Janasia Moore had 11 kills, but she only hit 75, which is pretty bad. In terms of assists, Mac Podraza had 42 assists, while Ohio State only had 4 service aces. They only missed 9 serves on the night, or on the day, because this was actually played in the afternoon and whatnot. So there's that. As a team, Ohio State had a combined 15 blocks. They had 26 block assists, which is quite impressive. In terms of digs, they were led by Kylie Murr and Mac Podraza, who each had 15 digs, while Emily Landot had 12 digs, and Hannah Grunsfelder had 10 digs. As a team, Ohio State only hit 192, which I guess it's okay, considering they're facing one of the better blocking teams in Penn State and whatnot. So there's that. Now for Penn State. So Penn State had they had 4 players reach double digits in terms of kills. Serena Gray had 13 kills, only 3 hitting errors for a hitting percentage of .357, while Caitlin Horde had 11 kills, only 3 hitting errors for a hitting percentage of .308. Anastasia Kudryashova and Joni Parker each had 10 kills apiece. However, Joni Parker did have 9 hitting errors, which kind of also contributes to Ohio State's amazing block and how they were zoning in on her. Anyway, so in terms of assists, Penn State had 46 assists from Gabby Blossom. Surprisingly enough, the Nittany Lions only got They had 10 service aces, and they only missed 6 serves, which kind of makes me wonder, why the heck did this team lose, or how the heck did this team lose? In terms of blocks, Penn State had 12 team blocks. They had 22 block assists and 1 solo stuff. In terms of digs, Jenna Hampton had 25 digs, while Gabby Blossom had 14 digs. They had no other players reach double digits in digs, and Penn State actually got outdug by Ohio State 73-61. Now, Penn State actually hit a whopping 165 for the match. After they took the third set, they stopped hitting 200. Third set, they hit 194. The fourth set, they hit an abysmal 111. And then in the fifth set, they hit -37. That alone does not help you win Big Ten matchups. And especially for Penn State, because no one is going to catch Wisconsin at this point. And then Nebraska and Minnesota, well, for Minnesota, Penn State's behind the 8 ball because they lost both of those matchups to the Golden Gophers. But here's the thing about Penn State that really bothers me about that loss. Penn State has a young team. It's understandable why they lost. They have they have 1 senior, but she didn't even play. Yeah, she wasn't even on the stat sheet. So I don't know if she was out because of injury or COVID or eligibility or whatnot. But this whole Penn State team is a very young team, and it's kind of understandable why they lost, because they kind of lacked a little experience. Their junior class looks really good, but their senior class is not quite there. They just don't have that They don't have that senior leadership punch, if you know what I mean. So, while they do have the great leadership from Russ Rose and how he's a mastermind when it comes to Big Ten games, youth and inexperience is really going to hurt Penn State this year. And for Penn State, this loss doesn't do them a whole lot of favors, as now it kind of puts them even further back of Wisconsin, Minnesota, Nebraska, and Ohio State. What the win does for Ohio State is that it keeps them undefeated, because, spoiler alert, Ohio State actually won their next 2 matchups against Illinois. They beat the Fighting Illini in 4 sets on Friday, and then they beat the Fighting Illini on Saturday in 5 sets. So, Ohio State at this point of time is 9-0, and they actually have a favorable matchup this weekend as they travel to New Jersey to face Rutgers. So I can see the Buckeyes going 11-0 to start off the season. But after Rutgers, the schedule gets really tough for Ohio State. I want to say next week they play Penn State, and then after their matchup against Penn State, they play Minnesota. I don't think that's right, actually. I'm almost certain that isn't right. I'm actually going to go check their website really quick, as I want to confirm this. Yeah, well, actually, is that right? Yeah, I was right. Next week, Ohio State does play Penn State. This time it's going to be at Penn State. It's going to be at State College. And then following that match, next Friday and Saturday, Ohio State plays Minnesota twice. And Minnesota's a really good team, as I've dictated. And then the following week, Ohio State plays Nebraska at Nebraska. And then I wouldn't say their next match. And then the following week after that, Ohio State plays Michigan, which Michigan's not all that great, but they're not all that bad. They have some good players. It's just taken a little while for their season to start. And then the following week, after their series against Michigan, Ohio State plays Purdue at Columbus. So now, after this week, Ohio State's going to get a rude awakening when it comes to the Big Ten, as they're going to be getting a lot of great opponents, and there's now that target on their back is now starting to grow bigger and bigger. But all that said, they passed their first test in terms of facing a ranked opponent in the Big Ten. So good for the Buckeyes. So I'm actually going to go over this brief little matchup because this is also another Big Ten matchup. And this one, I don't really consider, I don't know if the word upset is the key term to describe this matchup, but but it is an upset, all right. But this matchup actually came against Maryland and Michigan. Now, here's the tale. This is the tale of two different teams. Maryland has been pummeled to dust by a bunch of tough, talented opponents, and they've had to face some stiff competition, such as Nebraska, Ohio State, etc., etc. Like, I'm actually going to look at their schedule just in case. Yeah, they've faced Ohio State, they faced Minnesota, they faced Nebraska, they even played Michigan State, and they actually lost both of those matchups. So Maryland has had such a bad start to the season. They actually went into that matchup 0-8 in that first matchup against Michigan. Michigan, on the other hand, lost their first two matchups of the season as they lost to Purdue and whatnot. So there's that, and it was quite. And this matchup was basically the battle of which team can actually beat which team. And looking at Michigan's schedule, hold on a minute. Let me just pull up their schedule just in case I'm reading this right. Okay, so actually, Michigan registered a victory before their series against Maryland, as they beat Michigan State. So Michigan State has kind of had themselves an up and down season as well. So as for this matchup between Maryland and Michigan, so Michigan took the first set 25-21. That was to be expected. Michigan never trailed, and their pin hitters were just doing their thing. Now, the second set was what caught me off guard, as Maryland was a bit of a scrappy bunch, as the set number 2 was tied 17 times, and surprisingly enough, Maryland took the second set 25-23. The third set was what really also surprised me, as it was tied 5 times, but Maryland took the third set 25-22, and they took a 2-1 lead. And keep in mind, before we continue, Maryland actually had a 13-game conference losing streak, a 13-conference game losing streak. They had lost 13 games in a row in the Big Ten, dating back to last season. Maryland has kind of been the Detroit Lions of this conference, in my humble and honest opinion. So the fourth set, with their backs against the wall, Michigan took the fourth set quite easily, 25-18, and everything was looking all good in the neighborhood. It looked like Michigan was gonna escape with a victory over Maryland. Now the fifth set was tight, as there were 4 ties. The lead changes unfortunately, there was an error in the lead changes when it comes to this PDF. But long story short, Maryland took the fifth set 15-12, and they snapped their 13-game conference losing streak as they beat Michigan. And unfortunately for Michigan, they were the team that had to lose to that one team in the conference. So remember how Michigan's football team lost to Penn State, which was winless on the season? Michigan's women's volleyball team did that. I guess it's true what they say. Michigan loves company. Okay, that was a pretty bad pun, but but looking at the stats. Okay, the stats are good. Now the stats were what really amazed me. Oh, we're going to have some fun with this. So Maryland was led by Erica Pritchard. Now she's a talented player. She was picked as the preseason All Big Ten when the season started. So Erica Pritchard had 18 kills. She had 9 hitting errors for a hitting percentage of .225. That's pretty good. She was actually the only player in double digits in terms of kills, as their next kill leader was Rebecca Rath, who had 9 kills, 3 hitting errors for a hitting percentage of .188. She took 32 swings. And then the third kill leader for Maryland was Jada Gardner, who had 7 kills, and she hit only .105. In terms of assists, Nicole Alford had 28 assists. And in terms of serves, Maryland had 8 service aces, which is pretty good. They missed 8 serves, which wasn't bad. They had a perfect ratio. In terms of blocks, Maryland had 19 blocks, surprisingly. They had 32 block assists and then 3 solo stuffs. They had 19 blocks as a team. That is going to come into play in a little bit. In terms of digs, they had 65 digs. 22 of them came from Sam Bergio, who had 22 digs, while Erica Pritchard had 16 of them, and Nicole Alford had 9 digs. As a team, Maryland hit 175. All right, so now let's get to Michigan stats. All right, so everybody, prepare yourself, everybody. Okay, so Michigan, in terms of kills, was led by Paige Jones, who had 18 kills. Now, that's pretty good, right? Right? No. Paige Jones, in addition to those 18 kills, had 17, count them, 17 hitting errors. 17 hitting errors. Absolutely atrocious. And she had 53 swings to go along with it. As a whole, Paige Jones hit a whopping 19. She hit 19 for the match, and she is the best player on Michigan. Why is the setter setting her multiple times when she's either getting stuffed at the net, she's hitting it out of bounds or into the net, or any of that stuff? Yes, Marcus said 17, and it's like, you cannot have 17 hitting errors and expect to win. But it gets better for Michigan. Okay, Jess Murizik had 14 kills. She had only 5 hitting errors for a hitting percentage of .237. And Jess Robinson had 13 kills, 2 hitting errors, and 23 attempts for a hitting percentage of .478. Also got to make note for May Pertovsky, who had 9 kills, 1 hitting error for a hitting percentage of .348. Marcus says the nerve of her for having 17 hitting errors. Facts, Marcus. It gets better for Michigan. So Michigan had a 6-2 offense. They ran 2 setters. Maddie Dowd had 24 assists, while Scotty Johnson had 20 assists. In terms of serves, Michigan had 10 service aces. So that's good. But they missed 22 serves. 22! This isn't Oregon State. You're facing a Big Ten opponent. You can't miss 22 serves. All right, now for digs. So Hannah Grant had 16 digs, while Paige Jones had 11 digs. I guess that kind of makes up for the 17 hitting errors, except not really. So Michigan, as a team, hit 199, which is pretty bad, even though Maryland had a boatload of blocks. But here's the thing that stood out to me. Here's the mind-blowing stat. Michigan had 64 kills, while Maryland had a whopping 41. Michigan had 23 more kills than Maryland and still lost. Maryland only had 41. How does a team with those numbers, how does a team with 64 kills manage to lose? I don't even get it. And how do you keep getting out, and how did you get outblocked by Maryland of all teams? This is Maryland we're talking about. Nothing against Maryland, but if you're going to make the NCAA tournament, you can't be losing to teams like that. And then in terms of digs, Maryland outdug Michigan 65-51, which is absolutely atrocious. And like I said, you cannot have 22 service errors. It's like Michigan deserved to lose this. I'm sorry, but Michigan deserved to lose. You can't have numbers like that. Like, the kills are one thing. The service errors are another, and then the blocks are certainly another. Like, and Maryland only had one player in double digits in terms of kills. And Michigan had 3. They almost had another one reach double digits in terms of kills, but, like, keep in mind, Michigan has been receiving votes in the AVCA polls. I'll give Michigan somewhat of a break because this was only their 4th match of the season, and they do not have one senior on their team. Their only senior actually opted out this season, so that's kind of a bummer. But still, like, what are you doing? It's like, you came into the season ranked, and you disappointed. It's like, you looked good against Purdue, and then you got a decent win over Michigan State, but against Maryland? Why do you gotta do this to me, Michigan? But again, like I said, Michigan loves company when it comes to their football team and their women's volleyball team. Am I right, Kawhi? Yeah, I'm right. All right, so now for the final matchup of my recap. So this wasn't considered an upset, but this was actually between number 4 Nebraska and number 5 Minnesota. So I decided to throw out the term upset because you can't really consider Minnesota beating Nebraska as an upset or vice versa, because Nebraska is ranked ahead of Minnesota, but Minnesota was chosen to finish higher in the Big Ten preseason rankings over Nebraska. So you can make the argument that one deserves to be ranked higher than the other, or one deserves to finish higher than the other. So the first set, Minnesota just dominated that first set. They straight up spanked Nebraska in the first set. They only trailed one time, and there was only one tie as Minnesota beat Nebraska in set 1, 25-15. Then in the second set, it was looking like Minnesota was going to dominate again, as they actually led 8-2 in the opening parts of set number 2. But then Minnesota broke the number 1 rule: never count out any Keegan Cook coached team, as Nebraska took the second set 25-20. The third set was the closest, as it was back and forth between both Minnesota and Nebraska. It looked as if Nebraska was going to take that third set, but then Minnesota pulled off some trickery and took the third set 26-24. And then the fourth set, once again, it was tight. It actually looked like Nebraska was going to force the fifth set, and then Minnesota came back with some great plays down the stretch. They actually led, I think it was 24-21 at one point, and then Nebraska scored 2 points to get within 1. But then Minnesota put the match away, and that was that. So Minnesota won the first matchup. I'm not going to really go over stats. I'm just going to say that Minnesota just earned that victory, and they really played well. But one thing I will note is that Minnesota only had one player in double digits in terms of kills, and that was Stephanie Samity, who had 27 kills. She only had 5 inning errors, which is quite impressive. And believe it or not, Stephanie Samity had over half of Minnesota's kills, so that's pretty impressive. But at least they're actually winning. At least they're doing something right. I'm just saying. Other noteworthy stats of the match was that Minnesota really blocked it to Nebraska, as As a team, Minnesota had 20 blocks. They had 38 block assists and 1 solo stuff, while Nebraska only had a measly 18 blocks and they had 12 block assists. That is how you're going to win matches, with defense like that. And they can mainly thank Reagan Pittman, who is their dynamo defender. Like, she doesn't need to put up high kill numbers in order to help Minnesota win. As long as she's doing the little things like standing tall defensively on the block, or heck, even a couple times where she sets the ball, Reagan Pittman is just a staple for Minnesota. Now for the second matchup. So the second matchup, surprisingly enough, surprisingly in the not so good way for Minnesota, Minnesota did not have Reagan O'Dowd. Adana Rollins, who was out due to non-COVID issues and whatnot. So, I don't know why she was out, but it had all Minnesota said that it was because of non-COVID issues. So, the first set between Minnesota and Nebraska, part 2, Nebraska actually socked it to Minnesota in that first set, as they never trailed, and they took the first set 25-17. The same was said in the second set, as Nebraska never trailed, and they took the second set 25-15. And Minnesota had its backs against the wall, and they did everything they can to keep the set tight. I think they even led for a little bit, and then Nebraska came back, and it was tied at 22 apiece at one point until Minnesota scored the next 3 points to take the win in set 3, 25-22. So I won't go over the stats, except that Nebraska held Minnesota to a 153 hitting percentage, which was quite astounding. Nebraska's block was so much better, as they had 8.5 blocks and they had 17 block assists, while Nebraska had 5 team blocks and 8 of them were block assists and 1 was a solo stuff. Even though Minnesota outdug them, they had 0 service aces and they missed 8 serves. Woof. While Nebraska did miss 8 serves, they had 4 service aces, so that was something worth noting. And then Lexi Sun wasn't the one that was carrying the team. Maddie Kubik also did her part to help Nebraska get the win as well, as she had 10 kills to go along with Lexi Sun's 12 kills and whatnot. And there's that. And surprisingly, Stephanie Samity didn't lead Minnesota. It was Taylor Landfair who had 14 kills, while Samity had 12. All right, before I go to a commercial break, actually, first and foremost, Nebraska and Minnesota played at Nebraska, and both teams, like I said, they split the series, and it was a good weekend for both teams. It would have been a better weekend had Minnesota gotten that second win, but they couldn't control what went on off the court and whatnot. So let me just say this. Now, all of the thoughts of Teran Rodriguez are my thoughts alone and are no way, shape, and form of any second or third party organizations. But I will say this. I really don't like it when opposing teams' fans flex all over the losing team's Twitter account. Like, after Nebraska beat Minnesota, some of their fans decided to take it upon themselves and decided to rub it in when it came to the loss. Now, I'm not trying to say Nebraska has a bad fan base, but it's just not cool. It's not really professional, if you ask me. It's annoying. I know trolls do that when it comes to like professional sports, like if the Clippers beat, or if the Clippers win and the Lakers lose, or something like that, or the Chiefs lose and the Raiders win, or there's this bot that says, "That seals the deal. I am no longer a fan of this team. I've been a ticket holder since 1876, and I am no longer gonna see this, and I'm gonna go to another team." That is annoying. But what's annoying is actually just showing off and just not showing good sportsmanship. Like, it's not cool at all. Like, I'm a fan I'm a passionate fan for certain sports teams, but I'm willing to show good sportsmanship. But I just don't understand why opposing teams as fans have to flex all over the opponent who lost. Like, just take your win and move on. And again, I'm not trying to say Nebraska's fans are jerks. Like, I love their fans. They are passionate as heck. I'm just saying that they don't need to just go after the Minnesota players and the Twitter account. Like, just go to your own page and just celebrate and say all those things, because it's just not cool. Because these are college athletes. These are not like your form of entertainment. Those people have feelings too, you know, and especially for the people that like really care for Minnesota. Like, in the defense, in Nebraska's defense, like, some were saying that Minnesota fans were doing the same thing, but I didn't really see that. But this is just my take. Like, I just think that people going to opposing teams' pages after they win and flexing all over them really is just unprofessional, and I just don't like it. Like, I would never want to do anything like that. Like, I would like tweet about it on my own tweets, but I wouldn't want to like go that far, because you win with class and you lose with class. That's my saying. Maybe I'm just making too big of a deal of this, but that's just my take on things. So, on that note, we're going to take ourselves a quick little break. Going to get myself a little drink of water. When we come back, we'll be previewing some NCAA women's volleyball matches for this week. You are listening to Set Point here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. We'll be right back after this.
Hey guys, it's Blake Henley, better known as H-Town Blake to some of you. Happy to announce that Bases Loaded is back in full force. We'll be bringing that high heat every Tuesday night here on IE Sports Radio. So come home, get ready, dig into that batter's box, and see if you can chase that high heat, baby. So we'll be coming to you live with all the stats, all the rundowns, all the division rivalries, and every team that's going to make the playoff push to get to that one and only October and get to the pinnacle of what baseball is, to hoist that Commissioner's Trophy when it's all said and done.
What's good, fight fans? It's your boy, Marcus Los Great, here to give you what you want, here to give you what you need. Yeah, man. Yeah. I'm coming to you live, straight from your mama's basement with a crispy white tea. We are coming to you live every Tuesday at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Powered by IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
And welcome back to Set Point here on IE Sports Radio. You can check out all of our amazing shows here on different various platforms such as Spreaker, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, TuneIn, you name it. And that previous commercial, the Gloves Off commercial or the gloves off drop is a sign that Marcus Loos-Great will be coming on in T-minus 54 minutes after this show goes off. So definitely tune in for Gloves Off, because Marcus does a great job with his show. And if you don't tune in, the nerve of you. I had to say it. I'm sorry, Marcus, but I had to say it. Marcus does a great job with his shows. And also, yesterday, Bases Loaded made its return as Brandon Buckingham and H-Town Blake Henley kicked off Season 3 of Bases Loaded. You can catch them every Monday at 7 p.m. Pacific Time, 10 p.m. Eastern Time on StreamYard. Yes, they go on StreamYard, but if you want to listen to it on Spreaker or YouTube or Apple Podcasts, you can listen to it like an hour or so after they go live, if you like listening to it in podcast form. And then also, I forgot to mention, between the Loyola of Chicago matchup and Ohio State men's volleyball matchup, definitely check out State of Ohio Sports every Friday at 3 p.m. Pacific Time, 6 p.m. Eastern Time with Andrew Hagenbaugh. And also check out Chi-Town Weekly with Adam Karnick. He did a great job with his show yesterday. That goes on at 4 p.m. Pacific Time, 6 p.m. Central Time, and 7 p.m. Eastern Time. So those are those shows. And you can also check out all of our amazing shows on iSportsRadio.com. And check out who we are as a whole, because we are all just a bunch of podcasters and sports fans who love putting on for our fans. Alright, so now let's get into the NCAA women's volleyball matchups for this week. So, I actually have quite a bit. I actually have one noteworthy matchup per conference. I have a noteworthy matchup from the Big Ten, a noteworthy matchup from the ACC, a noteworthy matchup from the Pac-12, and a noteworthy matchup or noteworthy series from a non-Power 5 conference. And I call them matchup, but I it's actually known as series, but it's whatever. You know what I mean. All right, so the honorable mention for a matchup to watch out for, and this is actually just going to be one little matchup. So the matchup to watch for in terms of honorable mention is number 6 Baylor at home taking on Pepperdine. I won't get into this matchup too much. Now, Baylor has already played their Big 12 season. They finished second in the Big 12 conference, and they're still top 25. They're top 10, and they're still having a great year. Baylor has 5 seniors, 4 juniors, 5 sophomores, and 10 freshmen. Now, before you all go all crazy and wonder why this team has 10 freshmen and a combined 24 players, some of those players reclassified from their senior class and are joining the team as like not like red shirt high schoolers. Like, they're not eligible to play, but they're just there to like learn under Baylor's program and learn for next season. So Baylor is led by Yasonia Presley, who has 283 kills, and she also has 106 digs. Baylor as a whole kicks off its spring season on Thursday against North Texas, or as Larry B and I like to call them, the Mean Green. Yes, you have to say it like that. You cannot call them the Mean Green in like normal form. You have to call them the Mean Green. So, yeah, Baylor faces North Texas on Thursday, and then they face Pepperdine on Sunday. Now, Baylor's matchup against Pepperdine could be a potential trap game, because next Wednesday, Baylor plays at Texas, and Texas is the number 2 team in the nation. Before anyone asks, Baylor will be playing some Big 12 opponents, but those will not count as Big 12 conference games. Big 12 conference is done for the most part unless they make up games with a certain extent of teams. But Baylor could be walking right into a trap game when they play Pepperdine, because they could be looking too far ahead when they face Texas, because they want to help improve their chances of making the NCAA tournament. Though I can see Baylor making the NCAA tournament because they finished second in the Big 12, and they've also been ranked in the top 10 throughout most of the year. So the only way Baylor gets knocked out of the top 10 is if they lose to a lot of opponents. And I don't think that one loss against Kansas is really going to hurt Baylor going forward, because that was their first matchup of the season. So I just briefly talked about Pepperdine and Baylor because that's an interesting matchup. I actually just saw today that they added this matchup, and that's going to be a really fun matchup. So Baylor Pepperdine is on Sunday, but before before Pepperdine faces Baylor, they actually have another big-time matchup tonight as they face BYU. I want to say they're playing now, if I'm not mistaken, but Pepperdine and BYU face one another. Now, this is the matchup from the non-Power 5 conference that really caught my eye. Like, this is the matchup right here. This matchup is so important for the West Coast Conference because non-Power 5 schools do not get a whole lot of love, and especially when it comes to like the West Coast bias, because the West Coast teams start at like 7 p.m. Pacific time, while it's 10 p.m. Eastern time for all the others, for everyone else, so they're probably going to miss that. But this is the most important series when it comes to like non-Power 5 schools, because other than like Creighton and Marquette and all those other non-Power 5 conference matchups. But for the West Coast Conference, this is important because BYU is 6-0, Pepperdine is 6-0. Well, BYU is actually 7-0. They're 6-0 in conference. But Pepperdine is 6-0 in conference, and this is an early battle for first place. And this could really wind up being big, as whichever team takes both matches will still be in first place and will still keep pace with San Diego, which is the favorite to win the West Coast Conference. So Pepperdine's had themselves quite a good season so far. They've beaten San Francisco twice, St. Mary's twice, and they just beat Pacific recently. They struggled a little bit against Pacific, but it's all good. They managed to squeak it out in the end. While BYU hasn't really struggled all that much. They beat Portland twice, they beat Gonzaga twice, and they didn't have too much trouble with LMU. LMU was probably the toughest of their first 7 opponents. They also played Utah Valley. Utah Valley actually took a set off them, but Utah Valley is pretty good. So BYU doesn't rebuild, they reload. But here's the thing about BYU. They have a pretty young squad. But as for Pepperdine starting off, Pepperdine has 2 seniors, 5 juniors, 4 sophomores, and 3 freshmen. So it's a bit of a mixed bag here, as they are led by Rachel Aherns, a junior who has 93 kills on the season, and she has 40 digs. Shannon Scully is the second kill leader for Pepperdine, as she has 70 kills. One player that's really stood out is a player named Meg Brown, who has 61 kills. She leads the team in blocks with 29, and she was just recently named the West Coast Conference Defensive Player of the Year. I think she can potentially get the West Coast Conference Freshman of the Year. If she's putting up decent numbers in every game, she definitely could sway the voters to vote for her as the Freshman of the Year. And for good reason, too. I think she has the potential. And it would be quite fitting that a player from Southern California won the Freshman of the Year the past 2 years. As last year, Grace Froling of San Diego won the award. But Froling is originally from Nebraska, but she moved to Los Angeles, California, attended Marymount, and then she basically is at San Diego, while Meg Brown is from Santa Ana, California, and she's from Southern California. You know what? I'm getting too off topic. But I still think Meg Brown has the potential to win West Coast Conference Freshman of the Year. Other notable players for Pepperdine are Isabel Zelaya, who is a sophomore setter who has 256 assists. In terms of digs, junior Madison Shields, the libero, has 108 digs. And as a team, Pepperdine is hitting 282 while their opponents are hitting 152 against them. And like I said, Pepperdine is undefeated, and all is well in Waveland. Now, as for BYU, BYU is so different. They lost a lot of players to graduation, such as Mary Lake, to name a few. BYU has 2 seniors, 2 juniors, 5 sophomores, and 6 freshmen. So this BYU team is really young this year. And I think maybe their youth kind of showed against Utah from last year. But then again, that in the NCAA tournament. But then again, that's the Holy War. So, and you can never really predict a clear-cut winner when it comes to that. So, BYU, in terms of kills, is led by senior Taylon Ballard Nixon, who has 94 kills, while the next kill leader is Kate Grimmer, who has 79 kills. And in terms of assists, Whitney Bower, who is a sophomore setter, has 263 assists. While in terms of digs, Maddie Allen, a freshman libero, has 104 digs, while Bower has 82 digs. As a team, BYU is hitting 329, while their opponents are hitting 210. So they're not hitting 100 like most of the more talented teams that are receiving votes, but it's still quite impressive. So here's the thing about BYU, and here's the thing about Pepperdine. Both teams haven't really been challenged. BYU just got challenged against LMU, as LMU, they're not really having the best season. They did lose their middle blocker for the season. I don't know what happened to her. I don't know if she's hurt or not. But I will say this, it was a tough loss for her, for LMU losing her. Pepperdine just recently got challenged by Pacific. Now, Pacific's not really the best team in the West Coast Conference, but they're certainly not the worst team. I was more surprised that Pacific gave them more of a challenge than San Francisco, so there's that. Okay, so my final verdict, I think Pepperdine takes a match off of BYU. And when I say match, I mean an actual match. I think Pepperdine can beat BYU. Why? Because this is going to be BYU's first actual test. And Pepperdine just looks like a much well-oiled... They look like a much more balanced and well-oiled machine. Sure, they're pretty young when it comes to their team too, but they're not that young. Like, they have a lot of good juniors on that team, and their seniors do pretty well as well. They only have 2 seniors, and Shannon Scully is one of them, while the other is Ali O'Hara, who leads the team or is second on the team in blocks with 24. So she's been a force at the net as well. So I say Pepperdine and BYU split the matchups. I really think Pepperdine... realistically, I think Pepperdine can take both matches, but I think BYU is just a little too tough. And this is Pepperdine's big chance to prove themselves that they can hang with the big girl teams in the West Coast Conference. Because Pepperdine was chosen to finish 3rd, and this could be very important because Pepperdine cannot afford to lose big-time matches. They had a lot of big-time wins last year. The problem was they only had like a couple. One was to San Diego. They swept San Diego at Pepperdine. They almost beat San Diego twice, except they lost the first matchup, and they almost beat BYU, but they lost that matchup. And they had a bunch of other matchups they lost to, such as Pitt and whatnot. So I'm going to say BYU and Pepperdine split their matchups. So there's that. So now, before we continue, I totally forgot about the AVCA coaches polls. We'll start with the men's first. I'm going to go quick when it comes to these coaches polls. So the men's coaches polls, the AVCA top 15 men's coaches polls, 15 through 11, 15 Loyola of Chicago, 14 NJIT or New Jersey Institute of Technology, number 13 is McKendree, number 12 is George Mason, and number 11 is UC San Diego. 10 through 6, 10 is Penn State, 9 is Grand Canyon, 8 is UC Irvine, 7 is UCLA, and 6 is Long Beach State, surprisingly. 5 through 1, number 5 is Pepperdine, tied for number 3 is Lewis and UC Santa Barbara, number 2 is Hawaii, And to no one's surprise, number 1 is BYU. So now for the AVCA Top 25 Coaches Poll. So 25 through 21, number 25 is Missouri, number 24 is Marquette, number 23 is Creighton, number 22 is Oregon, and number 21 is Pitt. 20 through 16, 20 is Western Kentucky, 19 is Ohio State. Hey, welcome to the Top 25, Penn State, or Ohio State. Number 16 is San Diego, number 17 is Washington State, and number 16 is Georgia Tech. 15 through 11, 15 is UCLA, 14 is Notre Dame, 13 is Louisville, 12 is BYU, and 11 is Purdue. 10 through 6, 10 is Penn State, 9 is Washington, 8 is Florida, 7 is Utah, and 6 is Baylor. 5 through 1, number 5 is Minnesota, number 4 is Nebraska, number 3 is Kentucky, number 2 is Texas, and the number 1 team, to no one's surprise, is Wisconsin. So there's your top 25 and your top 15 on the men's and women's side of things. So I really think Pepperdine pulls out this big win over BYU. I don't know if it'll be tomorrow or it'll be tonight, but I have a great feeling Pepperdine gets this win. BYU is very young this year, and unless of course I'm missing something, I think the waves are going to come crashing down on the Cougars. And that's no pun intended. All right, so that's my little non-Power 5 conference series of the week. Now let's go to the ACC, where there's actually just going to be one matchup. And it's a big ACC showdown between number 14 Notre Dame at number 13 Louisville. So these two teams actually were supposed to meet all the way back in the fall, but unfortunately due to COVID protocols, that second matchup between Louisville and Notre Dame got postponed, and it got pushed all the way back to spring, which really bummed me out. I would have liked to have seen that matchup get played in the fall. So these two teams actually faced one another the first time to kick off ACC play, and Notre Dame came out on top, winning in 3 sets, while Louisville was the home team. So there's not too much separation between these two teams. Notre Dame is actually 6-1 in conference, while Louisville is 5-2 in conference. Here's the thing. Notre Dame is a half game back of Georgia Tech, while Louisville is a full game back of Notre Dame. If Notre Dame wins, Notre Dame and Georgia Tech are both tied for first place in the ACC. If Louisville wins, Georgia Tech's all alone is now a full game ahead of Notre Dame in the ACC, and Louisville and Notre Dame are tied in the ACC standings and second place, with North Carolina and Duke and all those other unworthy ACC teams. Not trying to be a jerk or anything, but you know what I mean. So Louisville has 4 seniors, 5 juniors, 4 sophomores, and 5 freshmen. So it's a bit of a mixed bag for the Cardinals, as they are led by Anna DeBeer. She's only a freshman, and she has 77 kills on the season, while Aiko Jones is right behind her with 71 kills, and she also has 27 digs. Other kill leaders include Claire Chowsey is her last name, who is a junior. She has 57 kills, and she actually has 43 digs as well, while Anna Stevenson has 56 kills. Alexis Hamilton leads Louisville in digs with 90, while in terms of assists, Tori Dilfer, a senior setter, has 172 assists, and Rachel DeMarcus also has 81 assists as well. I don't know if Louisville runs 6-2, or maybe DeMarcus had to play in some of those matches, but either way, there's that stat. So in terms of blocks, they are led by Aiko Jones, who has Amaya Tillman has 46 blocks, while Aiko Jones is second on the team in total blocks with 33. As a team, Louisville hit 263 in the fall, while their opponents hit 159. So that's pretty impressive. So Louisville always has a good team. Now as for Notre Dame. So for those of you that remember, I was very high on Notre Dame in the fall. I really thought they had an impressive team. They returned quite a bit of talent from last year, and despite adversity, they really performed well. So, anyway, Notre Dame in the fall, and actually, before I continue, Notre Dame actually played a match this past weekend as they played Valparaiso, and they actually won in 5 sets. Now, it was the first time Notre Dame had a match in almost 4 months. So, obviously, Notre Dame looked rusty, but I guess the AVCA deemed Notre Dame unworthy as they knocked them down a peg. Even though Louisville lost to Notre Dame the first match, Notre Dame got knocked down below Louisville in the AVCA coaches poll. So, anyway, Notre Dame, in terms of kills, is led by Caroline Neath, who has 114 kills. She's only a sophomore, mind you. Charlie Nigo is third on the team in kills with 86, while Aubrey Hamilton, a freshman outside hitter, has 90 kills. In terms of assists, junior setter Zoe Nunez has 358 assists, while in terms of digs, Hattie Monson has 155 digs. She is the freshman libero, and she also has 30 assists to go along with those 155 digs. Zoe Nunez has 96 digs, while Caroline Muth has 91 digs, and Nancy Kane has 70 digs. Now, the reason why Charlie Nigo is actually the star player of Notre Dame, but she actually missed a couple matches due to, I don't know what happened to her. I don't know if it was injury or if it was COVID protocols, but she was unable to play against Pitt, and in one of the matches, Notre Dame actually lost to Pitt. But Pitt's a good team. Like, the first matchup, Notre Dame was lucky to win that one, because they were actually down 14-12 in set 5, after they had rallied back from a 2-0 deficit to force a 5th set. And luckily, Notre Dame was able to squeak out that victory. So, there's that. So, here's the thing about Notre Dame. Well, actually, before I continue, Notre Dame has hit 232 on the season while holding their opponents to 173. So, here's the thing about Notre Dame. Notre Dame actually got a match in. So, that's good for them. While Louisville actually got a scrimmage against Dayton, so I guess that's worth noting as well. So both teams aren't necessarily rusty, but I will say this matchup really is crucial. But I have to go with Notre Dame for this one. I think Notre Dame has what it takes. While they are going on the road, they know what to expect from Louisville, and they know that they cannot have another performance like they did against Valpo. Notre Dame really has to prove to everyone that they do not ever deserve to be ranked underneath Louisville. They need to pull out this big win because their conference actually gets a little lighter until April 1st when they play Georgia Tech. Like, the only other team that I could see Notre Dame having trouble against is probably Miami, if not the Duke or North Carolina teams. But I think Notre Dame needs to win this match. This is crucial because that April 1st matchup could wind up being huge for them, and they can't leave anything to chance, especially since Georgia Tech's schedule gets really tough. Like, Georgia Tech has to play Pitt, they have to play Notre Dame, like I said, they have to play Louisville, and then they play the North Carolina Duke school. So, that's a huge game right there. And I gotta go, but for Notre Dame, Louisville, I'm going with the Fighting Irish. I'm not trying to say Louisville is not a good team. I just think Notre Dame is just a better balanced team. And I think that is the key. And I think that win over Valpo really woke up Notre Dame. Because although Notre Dame won that match, they kind of got shaken to the core, and they got pushed pretty deep in that 5-set match against Valpo. Like, I thought they were going to lose in the 4th set, and then they squeaked it out in the 4th set and then won the 5th set. So I got Notre Dame beating Louisville. I'm not trying to be I don't want Louisville fans to be like, "Oh, this guy's a hater. He disrespects our team." I'm just saying that Notre Dame is having a great year, and why should they stop after they had a great fall? They need to continue this momentum going forward, because if they can get this win, their schedule other than Georgia Tech becomes very favorable. So that's why I'm taking Notre Dame to beat Louisville. So I'm sorry, Cardinal fans, but that's what I think. Okay, so now for our third matchup, our third noteworthy series. It's going to be between Utah and Washington. And silly me, I actually forgot where this matchup is actually being played. So I want to say it is going to be played at Washington. So yeah, Utah is playing Washington at Washington, and that's going to be some fun times. And personally, it's going to be a great matchup. So here's the thing about Utah. Utah actually had its series last week against Oregon canceled because of a COVID outbreak. I don't know if Utah is on board to be facing Washington this week, but I'm just going to presume, for purposes of I want to presume that everything is going to be okay, I will have this preview. I don't care if I'm wasting time. I want to have this preview. So I'll try to go as fast as possible just because in 27 minutes we have another show going on. But Utah is led by Danny Drews, who has 143 kills, while Kenzie Corber has 71 kills. Both of them are seniors, and they are doing great things for the Utes. Junior I'm going to butcher her name. Junior Ka'aina Torres has 288 assists. I'm just going to call her Ka'aha. Yeah. Torres has 288 assists, while in terms of digs, they are led by Corber, who has 85 digs. Vanessa Ramirez, their defensive specialist / libero, has 72 digs. I presume she is the libero because she doesn't have any kills. In terms of blocks, they are led by Kennedy Evans, who has 22 blocks overall in the season. She has 29 kills to go along with that. Phoebe Grace has 21 blocks, while she has 33 kills on the season. As a team, Utah is hitting 281 while holding their opponents to 109. Here's the thing about Utah, however. They have not gotten battle-tested. Their 8 wins have come against Arizona twice, Cal twice, Arizona State twice, and USC twice. Unfortunately, USC is not a part of the upper echelon of the Pac-12. Sad. I'm kidding. But I hope they get back to relevancy soon. But Utah's opponents aren't really like the upper echelon of the Pac-12. Washington, on the other hand, has had a lot of humility. Washington, in their season opener, got lost in straight sets to Arizona State, which took Utah to 5, and then they eventually lost to UCLA, despite UCLA losing one of its better players in the early parts of the match. So Washington is 8-2, Utah is 8-0. Washington is led by Sam Dreschel, who has 137 kills, and she has 95 digs to boot. The 95 digs are second on the team. The second kill leader on the team is Claire Hoffman, a junior who has 130 kills, while she has 72 digs on the season. She's actually tied for third on the team. Well, actually, no, she's tied for fourth on the team in digs. Shannon Crenshaw, a junior libero, has 126 digs, while Ella Mae Powell is the setter, as she has 395 assists, and she has 91 digs. And then Lauren Sanders, their senior, has 65 kills. In terms of blocks, they are led by Lauren Sanders, who has 43 blocks, while Sam Dreschel has 39 blocks, which is quite impressive for an outside hitter. And then Marin Grote has 38 blocks on the season. In terms of hitting percentages, Washington is hitting 257, while their opponents are hitting 196. Now, Washington has had a couple of close calls. They won in 5 sets against Arizona. They won in 5 sets most recently at Colorado. They lost in 5 sets at UCLA. And then they've had a couple matches that haven't been the most cleanest matches against teams like Arizona State and then Oregon State. But not every team plays perfect. Like the Pac-12 is pretty competitive, and basically Washington is basically the case of no Pac-12 team is safe, and especially since they lost to Arizona State, that loss right there has them behind the 8 ball. So Washington has 4 seniors, 4 juniors, 2 sophomores, and 5 freshmen, while Utah has 2 seniors, 5 juniors, 5 sophomores, and 5 freshmen. So Utah is mostly young, while Washington is a bit of a mixed bag. So here's my thing on Washington and Utah. So I think Washington has what it takes to beat Utah. I think Washington and Utah split this series just because I think Washington has been more battle-tested. And while Utah does have an extra week off, I think that'll play more into the rust factor, especially if Utah has to travel to Washington to play the Huskies. And I just think that Utah is going to get a rude awakening from the Huskies. I'm not trying to be a hater toward Utah. I don't want Utah fans to be like, "Oh, this guy's a hater. He doesn't respect Utah's gameplay." No, I'm not trying to say that. I'm just stating the facts, because now if Utah had played its series against Oregon, I'd be singing a different tune, but I think Washington is more battle tested. I just really think that. And I think that they have what it takes. And I think that comes from humility as well. Utah, on the other hand, has not really been battle tested. They've had a couple of matches where they've had a couple close calls, but I won't consider that to be battle-tested. That's just me, however. So now for the final marquee matchup of the weekend, marquee series of the weekend. It's going to be number 4 Nebraska at number 1 Wisconsin in the Big Ten. So this is a huge series for both teams, as Nebraska is 7-1 on the season, while Wisconsin is a perfect 10-0. This is the tale of 2 different teams, as these 2 teams are meeting for the first time since last year, where Wisconsin beat Nebraska not once, not twice, but 3 times the Badgers beat the Huskers. And in all 3 of those matches, Wisconsin never dropped a set. I don't think I've seen that happen in a while. So this Wisconsin team is something special. So Nebraska has 4 seniors, 3 juniors, 4 sophomores, and 4 freshmen. So it's a bit of a mixed bag for the Huskers, as they are led by Lexi Sun, who has 76 kills on the season, while Lauren Stivrins has 68 kills. Maddie Kubik has 59 kills, while Riley Zun has 42 kills. Nicklin Hames has 227 assists, while in terms of the dig department, they are led by Hames and Kenzie Knuckles, who each have 66 digs, In terms of blocks, they are led by Stivrins, who has 23 blocks overall, while 3 different players have 16 blocks. Quite the amazing stat. As a team, Nebraska is hitting .282, while their opponents are hitting .139. So that's that on Nebraska. Now let's go. Wait a minute. Hold on, everybody. I read the stats wrong. So I just read their not so recent stats. Their most recent stats are Lexi Sun leading the team in kills with 99 kills, while Lawrence Stivrins has 92 kills, Maddie Kubik has 84 kills, and Riley Zun has 50 kills. In terms of assists, Nicklin Hames has 304 assists, while in terms of digs, Kenzie Knuckles has 93, while Hames has 92 digs, and Maddie Kubik has 77 digs, and Lexi Sun has 68 digs. As a team, Nebraska is hitting .261, which they actually went down a couple percentages, while their opponents are hitting .150. But that's kind of what playing Minnesota does for you. So now let's go to Wisconsin. So we all know the whole song and dance on Wisconsin. They are very senior heavy. They have 8 seniors, 1 junior, 5 sophomores, and 8 freshmen. And they have one player that's ineligible, but we don't care. Like she was basically an early graduate and enrolled at Wisconsin to play and learn under the Wisconsin way. So Wisconsin is led by, with their most recent stats, Dana Retke, who has 93 kills. She's hitting .452 on the season. She is Player of the Year material. While Devin Robinson, surprisingly enough, has 86 kills on the season. Grace Loberg, who's another great option for Wisconsin, has 77 kills on the season, while Danielle Hart has 56 kills on the season as well for Wisconsin. In terms of assists, Sydney Hilly has 344 assists, while in terms of digs, Lauren Barnes has 124 digs. Got to make note that Hilly has 64 digs to go along with her 344 assists, while Grace Loberg has 56 digs. In terms of blocks, this comes to no one's surprise. Dana Retke leads Wisconsin in blocks with 53, while Devin Robinson has 28 blocks. As a team, Wisconsin is hitting .351 while holding their opponents to .122. Now, Wisconsin actually has been battle-tested, as they do have a couple wins over Purdue, but that's about it. They haven't really been battle-tested all that much. They did get some sort of test against Illinois, and this past weekend they actually dropped a set to Michigan State, but I guess maybe the Spartans are better than most people are giving them credit for. But I will also say this, Wisconsin is just a well-oiled machine. They are just a they're just a well-played band, and they just go great together. And again, as I've been saying in the past, if this is the year one team has to win it, it's Wisconsin. They have 8 seniors, and a bunch of those players are stud players. And here's the thing about Wisconsin. They have a lot of key players who just play a great role into the team, such as Grace Loberg and Molly Haggerty and Dana Retke and Danielle Hart. Izzy Ashburn also plays well at the defensive specialist / setter position, even though we haven't seen her a whole lot. Lauren Barnes and Sydney Hilly are also great for the Badgers as well. So this Wisconsin team now gets its first true test when they play Nebraska. And personally, I think this is a Nebraska team that's hungry and is looking to avenge their split series against Minnesota. But here's the thing about Wisconsin. Wisconsin is not going to go easy on them, especially since this is going to be at Wisconsin. So I'm going to say Wisconsin takes both of these matchups. Again, nothing against Nebraska or anything, but I just think Nebraska, they're just a little bit of a step behind. Again, don't get me wrong, Nebraska does return all of its players, which is pretty darn impressive, but when they face Wisconsin, it's going to be quite the war. They kind of had trouble against Minnesota the first go-around, and I don't know how much Adana Rollins not playing in the second matchup for Minnesota was, but I'll also say this. I just think Wisconsin is going to be better prepared, and I think they are battle-tested and they're ready to go. But I don't think it's going to be easy for the Badgers. I think that the true season is starting for Wisconsin, and this is basically the point of no return. They got to go all out when it comes to facing off against some of these top-tier talented opponents. So I'm looking forward to this matchup. I really am. This is a top 5 matchup, and we shall see if Wisconsin can stay undefeated, because I most likely see Ohio State staying undefeated unless Rutgers can pull off some sort of crazy upset, which I highly doubt happens. And here's the thing about Ohio State and Wisconsin. This is the final thing I'll note, and then I'll wrap up. Wisconsin and Ohio State actually don't face one another. They actually are not facing one another on each other's schedule. I don't know if that was intentional. I don't know if that was meant to be, but Wisconsin and Ohio State do not face one another, which is quite interesting. So I wonder why, though. I think that would have been a great little matchup, especially since Ohio State needs to be further battle-tested. Even though they're going to get a real challenge next week when they play Penn State, then Minnesota, and then the following week they play Nebraska. Like, that schedule is going to start to pick up for Ohio State. But as for Wisconsin and Nebraska, Wisconsin takes both matches, and personally, I think Wisconsin just continues its dominance throughout the whole Big Ten until they face Minnesota or someone of that Excalibur. So, there's that. And that's actually going to wrap it up for me when it comes to Set Point. Thank you all for tuning in. A big shout out to all of our sponsors, such as Legacy Financial, Mom is Always Right Media, and the Sports Rundown. Thank you to our 3 sponsors for being the official sponsor of IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. And you can also follow IE Sports Radio on Twitter at IE Sports Radio, on Instagram at IE Sports Radio, and if you go on Facebook.com, or the Facebook app, just go to the search bar, type in IE, then the word sports, then the word radio, and if you see a black background and white words that says IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports, that's us. Give us a like and give us a little bit of a follow, and also leave us a nice little rating, because we are all a bunch of dedicated sports die-hard fans and podcasters who are willing to deliver by the fans for the fans. And honestly, it would really mean a lot, because we definitely appreciate your support, and without you all, we don't keep this thing going. And a big shout out to Marcus Losgreat, who's in the chat room. Thank you for tuning in, my brother. I really appreciate you. In about 12 minutes, Marcus Losgreat will be going live with Gloves Off. But as of right now, it is time to drop the beat, as I'm about to dip like a banana in chocolate. You feel me? Thank you all once again for tuning into Gloves Off. I really appreciate it. If you're listening on the live feed, I appreciate you tuning in. If you're listening on the replay, I appreciate you tuning in advance. It really means a lot that you are showing your support. Just like my boy Marcus Losgreat, who tuned in and is preparing for Gloves Off. It really means a lot. For everyone here at IE Sports Radio, this is Teran Rodriguez signing off. Have yourself a great rest of the week. Enjoy some volleyball matches. And I will be seeing you on the other side. Have a great night, everybody.